FC Victoria Köln is a German club with a century-plus long history that has never made it to the Bundesliga. Given Germany's more lax registration rules and the money that the Bundesliga brings in, I'm taking the reins at Victoria Köln in order to bring them the glory. But there's a catch. I can only sign players from the city of Cologne or its sister cities. That's right. In a league where there are barely any registration restrictions, I am, in fact, putting restrictions on myself. This is the Sister City Challenge. Let me explain to you how it works. We start by playing with the club exactly as it is, but any current players at the club that are not from Cologne or its sister cities, well,
you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, so till next time!
So you either gotta sell them or let them walk away. This also applies to the club's youth recruitment, since FM doesn't exactly give you a way to control which cities those new gens come from. The only transfers and loans that we can make are for footballers from Cologne and its sister cities. But to their credit, the city of Cologne does have quite a few sister cities in which we can find quality players from in order to achieve this challenge. We're also just taking the two neighborhoods in Berlin and considering the entirety of Berlin to be free game. Look, I'm already making this hard enough on myself. Let me just have this, okay? So, in this challenge, I've got 10 seasons to do the following. Get FC Victoria Köln promoted up to the Bundesliga, win a Bundesliga Meisterschale, win the DFB Pokal, win the DFL Super Cup, win an UEFA Continental Trophy, whether it's the Conference League, the Europa, or the Champions League itself. And if we somehow win a Champions League out of those Continental Trophies, we'll add an extra goal to win a FIFA Club World Cup if that tournament falls within the 10-year range of the challenge. Okay, I've yapped on long enough about the rules, let's get into the challenge itself. Year 1 is going to see us mostly sticking to the initial roster at FC Victoria Köln, but I am using our search filters to start giving out trials in the preseason to various players and free agency that fit our sister cities' criteria. We end up finding a few good ones that we bring onto the club like Ray Gaddis, Maxime Kosse, Jeremy Landu, Yoni Kalko, Emre Aksoy, and Alberto Salvini. They were all free transfers, but we also did help the club's financial situation by selling off young keeper Ben Vol and fullback Nicholas May amidst a rough opening season stretch that didn't see us pick up our first Zweite Liga win of the season until early September. But we did get a big win over Zweite Bundesliga side Fortuna Düsseldorf in the first round of the DFB Pokal, so that's neat. Additionally, the signings at the summer deadline and a 4-3-3 tactic that looks like something you'd run in FC24 did help carry FC Victoria Köln through the rest of the year as one of the best teams in the Zweite Liga, along with another DFB Pokal upset against Wolfsburg before losing in the third round to Bayer Leverkusen. By the time that the Zweite Liga resumed in January, we managed to go unbeaten from January to early April to be at the top of the table. But at the same time, an abysmal April and May does end up leading to Dinamo Dresden snatching the Zweite Liga title on the last day of the season. It's bittersweet, but the mission here was to get a promotion berth first and foremost, and the team has done just that. So, onwards to the Zweite Bundesliga, where with a bigger budget, we can start exploring more signings to improve the team under the parameters of our challenge. We brought in quite a few new signings during the off-season, the highlights of them being Lucas Cueto, Ramon, Fabian Ruff, Alfred Planas, and Sergi Samper, alongside getting a pair of great loans in Italian defender Alessandro Della Valle and Irish striker Mark O'Mahony. We also managed to make good money on the sales of Brian Henning, Michael Schultz, and Yoni Kalko to help us afford some of these signings. The season kicked off with a draw against Nuremberg, but much like last year, the team really got their confidence after an epic first-round matchup in the DFB Pokal against Bundesliga side Mainz 05 that went all the way to penalty kicks, where Alberto Salvini came clutch with 3 consecutive saves to boost us to the second round. The FC24 looking 4-3-3 in a 5-2-3 meant to mainly counter a lot of the 4-4-2 formations at this level do keep the team hanging around the mid-table for the first half of the season, but the DFB Pokal is where they made their mark, as O'Mahony shown in a game against Bundesliga side Borussia Mönchengladbach in the second round, and then survived in extra time to beat FC Heidenheim and reach the quarterfinals of the competition for the first time in their history. While they would fall to SC Freiburg with a 1-0 loss in said quarterfinals, January would see the team strengthen further with the arrival of center-back and local boy Mikel Stocker and Brazilian striker Gabriel Santos, as the team began to punch above their weight in the standings and broke into the top 3 of the Zweite Bundesliga by mid-February. But losses in 3 of their last 4 games of the season meant a 3rd place finish, and with it, yet another encounter with SC Freiburg in the promotion-relegation playoff games. The first match at Freiburg saw the hosts go up 2-0 early in the game, but in the second half, the Brazilians went to work as Ramon and Gabriel Santos scored clutch goals to help Victoria Khan escape with a draw and determine their fate at home. The second leg would have a bit of everything. A missed penalty, back and forth action, a goalie substitution due to injury, a clutch goal by Freiburg in the last play of extra time to carry it onto penalty kicks, giving people their money's worth. Both sides converted their first 4 penalties each, but Keitel had his shot saved by our backup keeper Elias Burdner.
Who wants to walk with Elias?
And Sergi Samper proceeded to capitalize, kicking Victoria Köln into an unlikely promotion to the Bundesliga for the first time in their history. 2 seasons into the Sister City Challenge, and we've got the first goal out of the way, getting to the Bundesliga. Great. We've got 8 seasons left now to get to the rest of those goals. On the bright side, that does apparently mean a new stadium is now under construction since the team's been relocated to Bayer Leverkusen's ground for the time being. Fun fact, this is also around the time where I found out that Harry Kane has now won trophies, finally, and the new manager that helped him do it is Jurgen Klopp.
What a story! Adrian! Like Rocky!
The Bundesliga also meant that some roster overhaul was a dire necessity, with expiring contracts of players who either don't fit the criteria of our challenge or who just aren't good enough for this level. So, just like last season, we have a lot of new faces coming in before the start of the calendar year, but some definitely stand out above others, such as Romanian keeper Andrei Gorcia, Dutch winger Shiloh Zand, Turkish midfielder Enes Keskin, English midfielders Ryan Ledson and Anthony Evans, local fullback Leo Nguada, Brazilian attacking midfielder Michel Lima, and center back Marcelo Alves. We'd open the season in the DFB Pokal against lower league Hildesheim and win 2-1 to advance, but for our Bundesliga debut, it'd be against FC Köln. A fitting beginning to pit 2 clubs in the same city against one another, if you ask me. Lucas Cueto ends up being the hero, as his goal in the 85th minute gives Victoria Köln their first Bundesliga win. A great moment, but after the first month with mixed results, I ended up grabbing Dutch defender Milario Bogard on loan during the transfer window deadline. We managed to perform well through the first half of the season, although it was clear that there are levels to this, as demonstrated in losses to Dortmund, Leverkusen, and Bayern München, but overall, I can't complain about a mid-table spot at the end of December. What I can do, though, is talk about our DFB Pokal form, because we're doing that whole surviving by the skin of our teeth bit in the competition once again. Magdeburg gave us a scare in the second round, but penalty kicks once again see us coming out victorious, and then we needed some Ramon magic in the third round of the Pokal to advance, and then we draw Bayer Leverkusen immediately afterward for the quarterfinal. Not to fear, The January transfer window just opened, and I did go shopping just before it opened. We brought in Turkish defensive midfielder Berke Vardar from Besiktas, English center back Michael Ihiekwe, Berlin winger Tim Maciejewski, and Spanish winger Mauricio Pochettino. And before you ask, yes, he is the son of the Argentine manager. But he's not the highlight of this window. No, we managed to convince Stuttgart to let Berlin-born keeper Fabian Bredlow to come to us on a 105,000 transfer fee, and all it took was to sell a barely used Anthony Evans on a profit. And the moves absolutely paid off, as we won 3 straight games after that, including another matchup against FC Köln, where 2 stoppage goal times from our side got us the victory. The winter transfer deadline came around, and I figured I'd just stay quiet through it, mind my own business, move on to the quarterfinal of the DFB Pokal game that was happening in a few days. But Dortmund decided to list one of their better younger center-back prospects in Mladen Vjetinovic on the market, and after some finagling, we signed him on our biggest transfer paid to date. Even with some struggles through the Bundesliga schedule in February and March, Vjetinovic would prove to be 100% worth it, as he became an essential part of our defense and helped us maintain a mid-table finish in the Bundesliga that would see us end up in 12th place, far above any expectations that the experts had on the team. But our biggest moments of the season came in the DFB Pokal, as we took down Bayer Leverkusen in the quarterfinals with a rather lopsided 2-1 victory, and then ended up getting Borussia Dortmund in the semi-final match. It'd be a game for the ages, as a 1-1 draw eventually led to penalty kicks for a total of 10 rounds, where nobody was missing a shot, until our man Michel Lima did, and with it, Dortmund survived by the skin of their teeth, and our Cinderella run with the cup came to a close. But staying in the Bundesliga and having a deep DFB Pokal run was a very good sign of things to come, especially since that meant we were getting paid for maintaining our spot at the top tier, and with it, we'd have a much bigger transfer budget to work with compared to the past 3 years combined. So, for our off-season in year 4, I remembered how well Alessandro Della Valle did for us on loan in the Zweite Bundesliga and paid Torino around 4.7 million to acquire him permanently. Between him, Milario Bogart, whose loan we made into a permanent signing this year, and Vjetinovic, the core of our defense was set for the next few years to come. We also finally dipped our toes in a Kyoto, Japan signing with bringing on midfielder Masahiro Kakinuma, and then found veteran Brazilian fullback Jorge lying around in free agency, so we brought him aboard. Berat Kalkan and Kaiki would also help complement our depth on the wings as well. Also, our new stadium was finally completed, the FC Victoria Köln Stadium. Hold on, something doesn't seem right about this. Let me just check my notes here real quick. Stadium's names, in fact, Victoria Köln Stadium. Huh, that actually is the name FM gave the stadium. Maybe it's just me, but this doesn't feel German enough. You know, the vibes are kind of off. So it made sense that Bayern München would be our first opponents for the season, and that they kinda sort of washed us in the christening of this new ground. Although the ground did claim its revenge by having Harry Kane twist his ankle after a bad landing from a jump. We're gonna need to think up a new name for the stadium, but that's something we can solve later on in the video. After that game, some calls were made, and we acquired Liverpool-born striker Tom Cannon on loan for the rest of the year, and given that we were trying a slightly asymmetrical 4-2-3-1 thing, he slotted in quite perfectly up top, and we began to fire on all cylinders. Cannon's consistency as a scorer boosted the team, as we managed a 10-game unbeaten streak post-Bayern that got ruined by RB Leipzig in late November, but that was only our second loss of the entire year, as we kept managing to either outscore the competition or do just enough to draw against them, which left us in second place on the table before the January window opened. Additionally, our DFB Pokal run was going smoothly as we defeated Trier, Union Berlin, and Augsburg on our way to drawing Dynamo Dresden for the quarterfinal. Dresden proved to be a tough out in the DFB Pokal, as they forced us into extra time where it took a 120th minute game-winning goal from Michel Lima to finally send them packing, and our reward for all of that hard work would be getting Bayern München in the semifinals. But look, it wasn't all bad. Compared to last season, our defense was in a much better place, and we were able to score goals consistently against anybody on the table. Key wins against RB Leipzig, Union Berlin, and Stuttgart at the tail end of the schedule would help us secure a stunning 4th place finish in the Bundesliga table, and with it, a berth into the UEFA Champions League next season. That alone would make it a great season by itself, but again, the DFB Pokal is proving to be the big spotlight so far, because we managed to engineer a comeback against Germany's Giants in the semi-final after giving up the first goal to go into stoppage time leading 2-1. Only for them to draw a 2-2 in the 91st minute. Only for us to reverse Udo card them as Mikel Stoker scored the biggest goal of his entire life in the 95th minute, eliminating Bayern München and punching our way into the DFB Pokal final for the first time ever. It would be Borussia Dortmund waiting for us there. The game itself would end up being a back-and-forth affair, but we let victory slip from our fingers in a manner similar to that of the promotion game against Freiburg 2 years ago in the last kick of the game. And this time around, we end up paying for it as it is Julian Brandt who scores what turns out to be the game-winning goal in the first half of extra time, and we have to watch as Dortmund hoists the trophy. Look, 4 years, and we've made upward progress in the cup to where I'm confident we can do well here, but damn, that was a really, really good chance to get our first bit of silverware in this entire challenge that we just let slip by. After a much better season in the standings and in the metrics to boot, a bigger payday for our 4th place finish plus the Champions League spot, we do have some financial legs to go ahead and strengthen the team even further for our upcoming 5th season. Tom Cannon didn't want to stick around, so we just went back to Brighton and brought in our old friend Mark O'Mahony to the club with a 6.5 million transfer fee to play the role of lone striker who scores lots of goals and stuff. Through installments, we were also able to get Justin Deal out of Stuttgart, and then arguably the crowning jewels of this entire transfer window in Crystal Palace's Matheus França for our attacking midfield for roughly 11 million, and Englishman Joe Gelhardt on a free transfer. Winger Linton Maina and defensive midfielder Javi Espart were also brought on board for extra measure. Those signings began paying dividends from the get-go, as Gelhardt scored 4 goals in the first round of the DFB Pokal, and Maina contributed with a brace in our first game of the Bundesliga season against FC Köln. Turns out that shoring up the offense was a recipe for success across all competitions, because through the first half of the season, the team is firing on all cylinders, staying within the top 4 of the Bundesliga, reaching the quarterfinals of the DFB Pokal, where they'll be facing Eintracht Frankfurt, and also managed to handle a tough Champions League set of fixtures where they are 4-1-1 after 6 games played, managing wins against established European competition sides such as Liverpool, Monaco, and Lazio. Of course, their only loss in the competition is to Bayern. That's almost to be expected at this point. Either way, we're in January 2028, and with it, Victoria Köln carried an initial winning streak from December further into January to reach the top of the table by the end of the month. But with a draw against Anderlecht and a loss to Lyon, they ended up in 9th place in the Champions League table and did go into the knockout playoff round. This leads into the January transfer window deadline where Kaiki and Michel Lima are sent out on loans elsewhere, and Turkish midfielder Ermihan İlkan is brought in on a permanent transfer, while keeper Guilherme Bastos is brought in on loan from Botafogo as a backup. And because we want to see how he looks up close and personal, given how our scouts rate his potential. He'd show some of that potential almost immediately by getting a clean sheet in his debut in the DFB Pokal quarterfinal against Eintracht Frankfurt.
Rück mal raus mit den Daten. Wie hoch ist deine Kampfkraft jetzt? Sie liegt weit über 8000. Ja. Weit über 8000?
Holstein Kiel of the Zweite Bundesliga would be set as our semi-final opponent for the Pokal, and we would triumph over them later on in the season to get to the DFB Pokal final once more. Unfortunately, our Champions League campaign does come to an abrupt end as we get Brighton in the knockout playoff round, where they win the first leg 1-0, and while we put up a good fight in the second leg at home, we only come out of it with a 2-2 draw to lose the aggregate and thus be eliminated from the competition entirely. As for the rest of the Bundesliga season, it's perhaps the time where I feel the early exit out of the Champions League was a blessing in disguise, because our form continues to stay consistent with plenty of wins and draws through the next 2 months, where a key 1-0 upset win over Bayern München happens in mid-March to set the tone for the rest of the campaign as the title race comes down to the final day of the season. In our game against Hertha, a solitary goal from Joe Gelhardt is enough to seal the deal as we win the game 1-0, and with a 2-point advantage, FC Victoria Köln would then raise the Bundesliga Meisterschale for the first time in their history. The solitary win against Bayern this season ended up being the difference maker in the tight race, and the Bavarians would be sure to remember it, as Bayern München was going to be our opponent in the DFB Pokal final. The heartbreak of the final against Dortmund was still fresh in my mind, and thus, this was a good chance for us to redeem ourselves with a much stronger side. Unfortunately, Bayern Munich is still one of the best teams in the world for a reason, and they showed as much in the DFB Pokal final by absolutely destroying us 5-0 to lift the trophy. 2 finals, 2 agonizing losses. This trophy's gonna be my white whale, isn't it? All things considered, our 5th season can be considered a resounding success in being able to wrestle the Bundesliga from Bayern's iron grip alone and winning the first trophy of our Sister City Challenge. 1 down, 3 to go. We promptly jumped into Season 6, as I decided I'd seen enough to make Guilherme Bastos our goalie of the future, as we bought him from Botafogo for 4.6 million. Xavi Espart decided he wanted to leave for a bigger club's offer after 1 season, and our transfers for the upcoming season kept that in mind. So, of course I absolutely pounced on the chance to grab André Santos as a free transfer to fill in that spot. Left back Vincent Burlet was also brought in on a free transfer, but we yet again found a crowning jewel to add to the midfield depth by bringing in Flamengo's Vitor Hugo on a 12.5 million transfer fee. Look, the DFL Super Cup game is going to be against Bayern, and I'm pretty limited as to the places where I can sign talent that can play at this level. I need all the help I can get, and if that means having to bring in enough Cariocas to where Cologne gets its own mini Rio de Janeiro neighborhood with Carnaval celebrations every February, so be it. Tangents aside, the Super Cup game against Bayern was proof yet again of a new signing immediately making an impact. Harry Kane did open the scoring with a PK, but after Justin Deal proceeded to tie the game in the 65th minute, it would be Victor Hugo scoring a beautiful goal from outside of the box to give us the win and eventually the DFL Super Cup. Thus, this checks out the 2nd out of the 4 trophies we need to complete this challenge. Oh right, remember that whole thing about the stadium name way back when? Much better. The first month of the season is spent more so finding our footing by integrating the new signings with the usual 4-2-3-1 tactic and a different 4-3-3 tactic that we've been practicing on the side, along with getting our Champions League matchups for the season prior to the transfer deadline. In order to add more depth to the defense, I ended up bringing in Turkish defender Yasin Uzcan from PSV on a 37.5 million transfer fee, but at 22 years old, he's going to be a part of this core for many years to come. Both Uzcan and the new 4-3-3 tactic paid off in dividends as we routed Dortmund and Freiburg in the 2nd and 3rd rounds of the DFB Pokal using that tactic. Not to mention, outside of a loss to Bayern Munich and Hertha, the team managed to basically go unbeaten for the first half stretch in both the Bundesliga and the league phase of the Champions League. And among those victories, They included a routing of Newcastle at St. James's Park and holding on to draws against Barcelona and Porto at Camp Nou and Estádio do Dragão. Once the January window opened, we brought in defensive midfielder Everton Costa on loan from Fluminense, and for January, it ends up being a mixed bag of results, but mostly positive, as we confirm our place straight into the round of 16 of the Champions League after routing Dortmund in a 4-3 epic at the last league-based game, and then managed to beat RB Leipzig 2-1 in the quarterfinal to advance to the DFB Pokal semifinal prior to the winter transfer deadline, where a 35-year-old Antonio Rudiger is on the market for 1.1 million as a transfer fee from Inter Milan. He fits the criteria of the challenge, of course we grabbed him. That's an easy 6 months of mentoring that I can get out of him with our other defenders until he retires at the end of the season. After the transfer window deadline, it's back to business, and while we managed to give Bayern one of their few losses in the Bundesliga in this stretch, they are way ahead of anybody in points, and they end up claiming the Bundesliga yet again. Although, the second place finish and the money that comes from it is something that I cannot complain about. As for the Champions League, the round of 16 sees us face off once more against Newcastle, who give us far more of a fight this roundabout, as they managed to rescue a 2-2 draw at the tail end of the first leg. But in the second leg, we had one of our better games defensively, as Mark O'Mahony scored the lone goal to send us into the quarterfinal against Inter Milan. But it was shortly after the home game against Newcastle in which starting keeper Fabian Bredlow tore his abdominal muscle during practice at the end of March, causing him to be out for 2 months. So Guilherme Bastos would be under trial by fire for the rest of the season. However, in the Champions League and against a team of Inter Milan's caliber, the entire team doesn't have enough juice, as they're beaten 3-2 in the first leg at home and then routed 5-2 at the San Siro to end their Champions League campaign. The bright side is that in the DFB Pokal semifinal against Holstein Kiel, Justin Deal had a masterclass of a game, as his hat-trick and a 4-1 victory carried us to yet another DFB Pokal final against Bayern Munich.
What?
Like Thanos, they're inevitable. And while we give a much better account of ourselves in this final compared to last year's, to the point of even dragging this one to extra time, well, there's still a gap there, because 2 goals in extra time and the Bavarians claimed a German double in the process. 3 DFB Pokal finals, 3 losses. I'm starting to understand how our neighbors of FC Köln and those guys over at Schalke feel just a little bit now. Given the incredible individual performances we had this season, plus a core of players that dragged us to a quarterfinals appearance in the Champions League, where we lost out to the eventual winners in Inter Milan, we have a really good team here now. We just gotta find that last piece of the puzzle in this next season to put it all together. Everton Costa looked like a good building block for it all, because we did make his loan into a permanent deal at 19.25 million for his transfer fee. But to me, the injury to Fabian Bredlow and Guilherme Bastos still being raw made me seek out a more proven goalkeeper in the market. And turns out, Liverpool was happy to part ways with Caoimhin Kelleher after a transfer fee with installments was worked out between our clubs. That meant we would be parting with Fabian Bredlow, but at 34 years old, Hull said he could use him way more than we would. Marcelo Alves also was sold around this time frame too. But our success in the Champions League hadn't gone unnoticed, as the now defending champs Inter Milan, Chelsea, and Real Madrid all activated the release clause on Justin Deal's contract, and eventually Deal chose to depart to join Inter Milan. We did get a solid 34.5 million out of it, but we now kind of needed a new elite winger on the left side. Inter Milan was nice enough to let us at least have fullback Adam Anzu on loan for the year, and he could play on the offensive end even though his skills were more suited as a left back, but there's no glory without having guts, and there was a certain Liverpool boy in the transfer market that fit exactly what we needed. So after a 39 million fee upfront with installments that would eventually lead to it being 76 million in total, we acquired the services of attacking midfielder Curtis Jones from Tottenham Hotspur. So of course, Spurs immediately get really petty about that and activate Mark O'Mahony's release clause on his contract, and he accepts their offer. We get 37.5 million out of it, but come on man, if you all just wanted to swap players, we could have done that instead. God, they're such drama queens. Have they even won anything since we've been doing this challenge?
Nope.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But once again, the city of Rio de Janeiro comes to our rescue as we activated the release clause on 21-year-old striker Williams over at Grêmio, and he looks bed, bath, and beyond ready for this level of football. Due to Bayern's double last season and us being in second place, we ended up playing in the DFL Super Cup to start the year once again, and going forward, we're up against Marco Rosa's Bayern Munich as Jurgen Klopp's taken up the job at Paris Saint-Germain. So we welcome Marco into his new accommodations accordingly with a 2-0 win over the Bavarians for our second straight Super Cup and some measure of revenge for the DFB Pokal last season. Lower league side Elversberg manages to hold us to a single goal, but that's all we needed to win the first round of the DFB Pokal tournament to advance and kickstart the season on a good note, winning against Leverkusen and Hanover before dropping one against Freiburg before the transfer window deadline. During the window, we end up agreeing on bringing in Shea Lacey from Manchester United on loan for the rest of the season, bring in free agents Deddy Sherhunt and Jonathan Okita on free transfers, and also agree to bring in Ross Barkley from Torquay United on a really cheap fee because I've been trying to do the veteran mentorship thing on the background so that some of these youngsters don't grow up to be degenerate footballers. Now that we got that out of the way, the remainder of the first half of the season is pretty phenomenal. It kicked off with beating Bayern at the Allianz Arena, which led to a run of unbeaten games until the end of October across all three competitions we were playing, and while that unbeaten streak was interrupted by a loss to Dortmund in the Bundesliga and Newcastle getting revenge on us for last season in the Champions League group stage, we just went right back on another unbeaten streak after that to punch our ticket into the Champions League playoffs, as well as the quarterfinals of the DFB Pokal, while only trailing Bayern by 3 points in the Bundesliga table. Other than loans for midfielder Florin Bunn and center back Emin Bayram at the transfer deadline in January, there wasn't much action for us this time around in the window. Our only blunder in the month would be a defeat at the hands of Inter Milan, but a win over fellow German side RB Leipzig at the end of the month would be enough to guarantee us a top 8 finish and a round of 16 berth in the Champions League. Speaking of Leipzig, we'd end up getting them as our draw in the DFB Pokal semi-final near the end of April after dispatching of Heidenheim in the quarterfinal of the competition. We would go unbeaten for the month of February, including beating Bayern again in the Bundesliga, but we admittedly had 5 draws too many compared to the Bavarians by the start of March, and the points gap was widening due to it. So of course, our round of 16 draw in the Champions League ends up being Bayern f***ing Munich.
That doesn't work for me, brother.
I do think our roster picked up on the immense levels of rage I was feeling towards having the Bavarians in our path in every important milestone I need to achieve for this challenge, because they end up running the table through the entirety of March on both the Bundesliga level and in the round of 16 legs, as we beat Bayern 3-1 in their own arena, and then managed a 2-1 win in the return leg at Gero-Bizan-Stadion. We then drew Arsenal for the quarterfinal of the Champions League, and look, by this point, we'd already managed to get a Bundesliga Meisterschale. So I'm prioritizing rotations of players for the Bundesliga games to keep our main core fresh for the competitions, and even while doing so, we eventually did manage to end the Bundesliga season in second place once again. We did it while unbeaten through this stretch too, which is really cool, but as I said, the cups are going to be our main focus for the rest of the season. So we rolled onto the UEFA Champions League quarterfinals, where the first leg against Arsenal is at the Emirates, and in a very tough game that looks like it's going to be a 1-1 draw, it's the lonely and Shea Lacey who manages to score an incredible last-minute goal to give us the advantage going into the second leg in Cologne. Problem is, Arsenal is a resilient team, even with Curtis Jones, a former Spur I should add, scoring the first goal of the game for Victoria Köln. Bukayo Saka decides to put the team on his back as he scores on 2 penalty kicks throughout the game in order to tie up the aggregate, forcing the game to go to extra time. Nobody scores during that though, so we're off to penalty kicks. Both teams go back and forth for the first 5 rounds, converting their kicks and leading to a sudden death situation. The 6 takers on each side manage to keep it alive. Vietinovic converts the 7th kick, but Arsenal wonderkid Ed Hewison's kick is saved by Kelleher, and thus Victoria Köln advanced to the semi-finals of the Champions League, where they would face Paris Saint-Germain. So while we escape them demons of Bayern Munich and survive Arsenal, we gotta deal with a Jurgen Klopp managed team once more.
WTF.
In the meantime, RB Leipzig ends up being a tough affair in the DFB Pokal semi-final, and it takes a second-half goal from André Santos to get past them in order to once again make the finals of the cup competition. But unlike the previous 2 years, we got Borussia Dortmund in the final. But we'll get to that one later because we've got to shift the focus back to the UEFA Champions League. In the first leg of the semi-final, the home crowd makes the difference as a 3-1 win comes on the back of a Victor Hugo brace. We head to Paris for the second leg the following week, where Williams scores an early brace to tilt the aggregate even further on our side. PSG's firepower isn't enough as they only manage a 2-2 draw out of the second leg, and with it, FC Victoria Köln are advancing to the Champions League final. And in it, we're rematching Inter Milan from last year's quarterfinals, as the legendary Italian club are trying to go back-to-back in Europe. 2 cup competitions, 2 massive finals, 2 trophies to complete this challenge. First, it'd be the DFB Pokal final against Dortmund. The last time we faced them on this stage, it was heartbreak in extra time.
You sound as though you're feeling the pressure.
I'm not feeling the pressure, no. You cannot put pressure on me, no chance.
What many expected to be a tough game between 2 of Germany's top clubs turns into a slaughter as we rout Dortmund 5-0, and with it, FC Victoria Köln win their first ever DFB Pokal, and they do so in style. That is now 3 trophies down, 1 more to go with 3 seasons left in this challenge. And we still got 1 more match where that last trophy is there for the taking against Inter Milan in the Champions League final. We do have to walk into enemy territory to an extent, as this final is being played at Stadio Olimpico in Rome. But it's one of those situations where the team has come this far, so relenting is not an option. The first half ends up being a quiet affair at first, but that's until Dumfries nails Matheus França with a reckless tackle that gets him red-carded and ejected from the game entirely. In the second half, as a Victor Hugo cross heads into the box and Matheus França is pushed hard enough to get a penalty kick out of it, after a VAR review of the play. Curtis Jones then takes the penalty and barely finds the back of the net with it. The 1-0 lead and the man advantage proved to be too much for even the defending champions to find a way to come back, as the clock eventually ticks down, and in something that's closely resembled to a storybook ending, FC Victoria Köln has won the UEFA Champions League. Oh, it's an absolutely unbelievable achievement, and with it, we do get our 4th trophy to complete the Sister City Challenge, and we managed it with 3 seasons to spare. The UEFA Champions League win does mean that we do qualify for the FIFA Club World Cup, but it's going to be the competition happening in 2033. Which is shortly after the end of the 10 seasons in which we set up the challenge. I'm not gonna lie, being able to do this challenge within the Bundesliga, with its financial resources, in the city where our team plays, definitely helped in achieving this goal, even with the limitations on any signings having to be only local or sister city players. But let me know what you thought of this experiment over in the comments. Don't forget the whole like and subscribe thing, and well, I gotta go research more stuff for my next video essay, but in the meantime, be on the lookout for me streaming here and there, whether that's here on YouTube or over on my Twitch. So, with that said, I will see you all next time.